welcome to another episode of Coast Connections. I'm Elizabeth Hines, and today it's my pleasure to be joined by the Victoria Hand Project. They're not only lending a hand around the world, they're also reaching out with a limb too, a limb and a hand to people around the world who have suffered disabilities and need prosthetics. Welcome to Kelly Knights. Hello, Kelly from Victoria with the Victoria Hand Project. Welcome, Kelly. Thanks for joining us from your lab there at UVic, I guess. Yeah, welcome. And the CEO of the Victoria Hand Project is Michael Perroni. Welcome to you, Michael. I'll see you're also in the lab there at UVic.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks for joining us today. And we're going to share the good news about not only the prosthetics that you're doing, but the wonderful work that you're doing in many countries, and that's expanding as well. So tell me, Michael, what was the impetus for starting this? What was the gap that you were looking to fill that wasn't out there yet?
Yeah, so the Victoria Hand Project was actually founded by Dr. Nikolai Dechev. So to go back, he was actually a master's student at the University of Toronto, and he created a groundbreaking prosthetic hand with something called adaptive grasp, so the fingers can move semi-independently and grip objects much better. And unfortunately, it was very expensive to manufacture, so it sat on the shelf until 2013 or so when a student found it and said, hey, this would be really great to make using 3D printing. And they fortunately got a research grant, and they created a 3D printed hand and did a research study in Guatemala to really see the feasibility of this prosthetic hand. And the participants in the study were actually asking to keep the hand because they didn't have one of their own. And this really spurred the idea for Dr. Dechev to start a non-profit organization to provide these 3D printed hands around the world. And that was actually founded in 2015, and then we've just grown since then.
Wonderful. And Kelly, we've heard the term now a few times, the 3D printing, 3D printed hands. For a Luddite like myself, this is sort of my first introduction to 3D printing. Tell us a little bit about what that actually is. And we've got a short video clip here that we'll also show while you're chatting to us about how that happens on a printer.
Absolutely. So 3D printing, there's a lot of different methods of 3D printing. Some people call it additive manufacturing or rapid prototyping. The type of 3D printing we use is a type of 3D printing called fused deposition modeling. So this type of 3D printing, we have a roll of very thin plastic that's called filament that's pushed up through a tube and then through a hot nozzle. And so this nozzle moves in an XY coordinate across the print bed, and it'll deposit a very, very thin layer of melted plastic, so which fuses together as it cools. So once one layer of material is down on the print bed will then move down by just a fraction of a millimeter, and then another layer of tiny plastic is deposited on top. So this way, layer by layer, a part can be created from nothing.
That's so cool. And Michael, just behind you, as we're looking at you on the screen here, there are a couple of 3D printers to your left and to your right over your shoulders there to give viewers an idea of what that is. I mean, at home, our printers, we have ink cartridges. You've got plastic cartridges that go into yours. And of course, it stacks up. It makes a 3D image, which makes your project with your prostheses so much more innovative and interesting and adaptable. Doesn't it, Michael? Because this equipment, tell us how this is used with your clinics around the world and the partners that you're working with.
So Victoria Hand Project, we utilize 3D printing to make prosthetic arms like the ones that are all over the wall around me. And what we do is here in Victoria, at the space we have at the University of Victoria, is we do the design and engineering of the prosthetic devices. And then we also create the workflows, and we transfer this technology, the workflows, the prosthetic designs to our partners around the world in resource-poor communities. And they will actually use the 3D printers and other advanced tools like 3D scanning, advanced computer design tools to actually make the prosthetics in their own clinics. And this is very important because in many parts of the world, access to prosthetic care is not really guaranteed. in Canada, we're very fortunate that there is a lot of coverage for most people. But in many parts of the world where we work, somebody will need to probably pay out of pocket for a prosthetic device, which can cost them $1,500, $1,000 or more. And for many people, that just isn't feasible. So Victoria Hand Project, what we try to do is we try to provide the prosthetic devices to the people that really face barriers to accessing care.
Mm-hmm. And Kelly, I was really shocked to learn that 80% of the people in the world who need prostheses, who are amputees, are in the developing countries. And these 80%, only have 5% of them have access to prosthetic devices. That's staggering. So how many countries are you in right now, Kelly?
Right now, we have partner clinics in 10 countries around the world. So these are partner clinics where we have traveled to the country, we've done the full training with the partners. So we've provided them with 3D printers, we've shown them how to 3D print, we've shown them how to 3D scan, we've shown them how to assemble the hands. And so these partners are able to meet people on an ongoing basis and fit them with the prosthetic hand that they need.
And what's the difference, Michael, between like a conventional prosthesis and a 3D printing one in terms of some of the advantages that it has?
So we say that 3D printing has a number of advantages in various ways. So one of them is really the cost of the prosthetic device. Our entire prosthetic device for somebody who's missing their arm below their elbow is only $100 US in materials. And this is comparable to other prosthetic devices, which can be in just materials, hundreds or thousands of dollars. There's even some that are the advanced prosthetic devices, the electronic ones, you see the hands doing all this, and they can be tens of thousands of dollars, which is out of pocket for most people. And also with 3D printing, we can create the customized prosthetic device. Mm-hmm. So everyone's limb shape is very unique, and what we want to do is, by using 3D scanning and some software that we've developed, is we can create a socket that's completely custom to someone. So you get a nice, safe and comfortable fit on someone's limb. And then also with 3D printing, it allows us to make very advanced objects that can't easily be made by other manufacturing methods. So it would be, our wrist ball, I can't really show it too easily here, but it's just not very easy to make using conventional devices, like milling or CNC. Also with 3D printing, since we do provide these to our partners in the countries where we work, they can make the prosthetic device right there, and it really speeds up the timeline for providing someone with prosthetic care. Conventionally, if somebody needs a prosthetic device in these countries, they might not always stock the components. And that means that they need to order it from other countries, which can be expensive and time consuming. But with 3D printing, somebody can walk in the door, they can be assessed, they can have their plaster impression taken of their limb, have that scanned, and if everything is done correctly and ahead of time, they can walk out the next day with a prosthetic device that's custom to them.
You're changing lives one digit at a time. That's just so wonderful. I can't imagine how rewarding it must be for you to see that on site, people coming in and getting their prosthetic device for the first time. And you provided us with some really interesting video today too. From the first one that we're going to see is a young man from Kenya. It's about 2 minutes and 30 seconds. We'll just take a look at that one now.
I am Lewis Gatonye Njuguna. I'm 21 years old. I come from Limuru. I'm a film student at Kenyatta University. I was electrocuted by a 3-phase wire. The whole process of the amputation and healing, I underwent 4 surgeries. Obviously, I was born with both hands, and then now I had to adjust to this new life, which I found pretty hard because in my head, I thought people will judge me, people will laugh at me, look at me different. So it was really hard for me at first. I usually put on maybe a hoodie or a jacket to hide my arm. I will place the amputated arm in my pocket so that I will at least hide and at least feel like no one is judging me or no one will notice that I have one arm. Since I got my Victoria hand, my life has tremendously improved. I am more confident. I learned how to accept myself. I learned how to do things that I would do before. Yeah, so I can now cook ugali, I can clean my house, I can wash dishes with the Victoria hand. I can walk comfortably among people. In school, it also helped me because I'm a film student and you deal with equipment like cameras. The Victoria hand has helped me to handle equipment more carefully and more effectively. For Victoria Hand project, I'm so happy because of what they are doing. They're really making an impact in people's lives, and they've made life better, made life easier, help with healing psychologically. I'm so grateful. That is all I can say.
That Lewis from Kenya, that was such an interesting look at this young man who was electrocuted. What a horrible thing to happen. But I was surprised to see the dexterity he had with that hand when he was using his film equipment now, as he's a filmmaker. He had a lot of very fine motor skills with that Victoria hand. Now, we don't want to get it confused with the Victorian hand, because those were made of quite different things back in the day, weren't they, Kelly? No 3D printing.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the older prosthetics would have been made out of wood or iron or, you know, a piece of wood with a spoon attached or something like that. So Victoria hand, completely different. We've come a long way with this. There's another lovely video that we have of a young lad from Nepal, again, another one of the countries that you're in, little Jigmi here, and he's receiving his arm for the first time, and just the look of delight on this little lad's face. It's just such a joy. And his story, Kelly, can you tell us a little bit about his backstory?
Absolutely. So Jigmi was actually he was the first child to receive the smaller version of our hand. We called it the child's hand at the time. We've kind of started calling it the small hand now in case there's smaller adults who want it as well. But he was the first child we were able to fit, and he was so excited and thrilled. He went to a playground, he was picking things up. But his story of losing his limb was quite remarkable to hear. He was born in a very, very rural town in Nepal, very remote in the mountains. And he actually was just playing with his brothers and fell off a roof and broke his arm. So something that would happen to lots of kids, somewhere like Canada, you break your arm, you go to the hospital, you get a cast, it's no problem. But for Jigmi, him and his family traveled a couple days by foot to the nearest village to try to get care, and they said that they weren't able to help him. He needed to go to a bigger hospital. So he was supposed to catch a plane to get to Kathmandu, and the plane crashed. It was just a horrible series of bad luck. So Jigmi and his family had to travel on the back of, I think it was, horses across these mountain trails with all of these people helping them. And by the time they got to the hospital, Jigmi's arm was infected and it was too late. So they had to have it amputated. And for Jigmi and his family, conventional prosthetics were just completely out of the picture. It was way too expensive. So they were looking and they were looking and they weren't able to find anything. And it worked out really well that they got in touch with us just as we were finishing this design. So we were able to provide him with the first hand. Yeah.
How wonderful. And there he is sliding down his slide now and having fun just like any little boy. And he's in school in Kathmandu. That's just so wonderful. And we have another story about Vanna, from Cambodia, the soldier who suffered, I guess it was a landmine. Tell us about how he lost his hands and arm. Do you want to take that one, Michael?
Sure, yeah. I mean, unfortunately, Cambodia does have a history of landmines that have been left over from, I believe it's the 70s or 80s. I'm not exactly sure. And there's a lot of people that that have approached our partners that unfortunately had lost their limbs due to landmines, and there's also people that are missing their legs, and that's really why we wanted to work in Cambodia, was just because of the great need from that. And yeah, it was actually that there was somebody locally who runs a charity called Kids International, and they had traveled to Cambodia a lot of times in the past, and they knew Vanna, and they were helping his daughters go to school actually and paying the school fees. And they approached us, and we actually did get some support, a one-off donation from someone here to actually support the fees for the prosthetic device, the clinical fees, the 3D print fees, everything like that that goes into providing someone a device. So they were actually able to provide him one of his arms for free. So Vanna did not pay out of pocket at all. And that's really what Victoria Hand Project tries to do with our model, where we provide the prosthetic devices to people free of charge that don't have the means to pay.
That's wonderful.
But thank you. Yeah,
Wow,
and Vanna,
wonderful.
he's actually running a book stand in Cambodia, and he uses the prosthetic to help with various things, just running his own business. So it's just really amazing that we were able to get this local support out of Victoria to help with providing his hand.
Wonderful. That's just wonderful. And he's working again and, reunited with his family. And does it get any better than that after such catastrophic injuries? So I'm so proud of the work that you're doing around the world. It's just so heartwarming to hear about this. And Kelly, little Bin Amin, this little 4-year-old from Kenya, tell us about how he burned himself very badly, this poor little dude.
I might pass this one to Michael because he actually helped fit him when he was in Kenya.
Oh, okay. Michael, you're the one for little Bin Amin.
So we were expanding to Kenya in 2000. We were planning to in 2019, and then fortunately we were able to in February 2020. And when we expand to a new site and we bring the equipment, we do the training in person, and we try to fit a few people a few local people to really show the entire process. And we heard Benjamin's story, and unfortunately, when he was young, he was playing with his friends and his siblings, and he fell on a pile of burning goat dung, and it meant that he lost both of his hands and parts of both of his feet just due to the burns, and he had to have additional surgeries for the burns. And he was in a sort of a northeastern part of Kenya, which almost tucks into Somalia. And we were working in somewhere called Eldoret, which is further west. So we fundraising got some fees to help cover his transportation so we could come to Eldoret. And yeah, I just remembered how funny and curious he was about the whole process. He was, we're in the workshop and he's just poking his head in. He wants to see, everything that's going on. And we had his prosthetic device on the table, and he started to put it on. And even though it didn't have the strapping or anything and it wouldn't open and close, he just wanted to have it on his arm, and he wanted to, shake his mom's hand and go and touch the bushes.
Aww.
And we have some footage of him like pulling on car door handles and everything. And
Aww.
yeah, he was just so amazing. We're just so happy that we could help him.
Beautiful.
And
Kelly, tell us, how actually is the hand and the arm activated? It looks like we've got a side view of one of the arms here with some wires. Just how does that actually work?
Yeah, so you can see that each person wearing the arm also has, it looks almost like a backpack.
Yeah.
So I have a hand here, I can kind of talk. But you see, so there's the hand, and then there's this cord, and then there is the little backpack that people wear. And so it's a fully mechanical hand. There's no electronics involved, and that is for a couple of reasons. It helps us keep the cost really, really low. It means they're really easy to repair. It means they're really easy to manufacture. It also means that the hand can get wet, so it can be used for cleaning or cooking or anything like that. But this fully mechanical hand is just actuated by a cable. So by shrugging your shoulders or reaching forward, a person will shrug their shoulders a little bit, actuate the cable, and it will close the hand.
Wow.
So it's a really intuitive motion, just like moving one part of your body is able to make that hand closing motion.
That's so exciting. And a 3D printer made that device. It's just phenomenal, you guys. It's just, when I'm looking at you here at the screen, see all these arms and hands, you look like a couple of arms dealers.
International arms dealers.
The good kind, though. Well, the kind that get Nobel Prizes. Yeah. How can viewers help support this? You mentioned one of the hand or prosthetics cost around maybe $300 US or $100. How can we sponsor a hand? Can we sponsor a 3D printer? How can we get involved in this and make a difference?
Certainly. So with Victoria Hand Project's existing partnerships, we have people that help support the prosthetic devices for individuals. So this would be the cost of materials, paying someone on the ground in the countries where we work to 3D print and assemble the prosthetic devices, and also paying the clinicians who fit the devices. And this also helps provide support for the local healthcare infrastructure in the countries where we work. And it's around $300 US, but it also varies country to country depending on salaries. But then we also do have other things we're fundraising for. So actually right now at this time, Victoria Hand Project is fundraising for a full expansion to Ukraine. So
wonderful.
We actually had the founder, Dr. Nick Dechev, he was in Ukraine in late January for a pilot project where he worked with 2 different clinics and fit 5 people with prosthetic devices. And this sort of laid the groundwork for the partnership and for us to go back there in the coming months and actually do a full expansion. So the 2 partner sites in Ukraine would become like the ones that Kelly mentioned before, where they have the 3D printers, the tools, everything like that, and all the training. And then they'll just be, providing these prosthetic devices for people across the country that don't really have access to prosthetic care. So that's something that Victoria Hand Project is doing right now.
That's wonderful news. I'm really glad to hear that you're going to be in the Ukraine as well. Yeah. Kelly, what are one of the most rewarding aspects of the work that you do there in the lab and on the ground?
The lab is, it's kind of interesting because it's easy to get kind of caught up in our bubble. Our team is mostly engineers, so we're doing a lot of, we're getting patient feedback, we're doing testing on the hand, we're trying to make it better and better for the people that are using it. But then sometimes you look out of your bubble and you I'm reading that patient feedback and you're like, wow, somebody is using this hand and they're really liking it. We got an email the other day from somebody saying, oh, I wasn't expecting this to be a big deal, but it's changed my life. I love it so much. I found it so helpful. And that it feels really, really good to know that just something made with such simple materials can make such a big difference in someone's life, helping restore that self-esteem and independence. It's really, really rewarding.
Life-changing, yeah. And Kelly mentioned email. With a prosthetic hand, would you be able to actually use your digits on a keyboard? Is it that fine of a motor skill?
I think there are some people that have been doing it, but they sort of put the hand so there's just one finger pointer and then just hitting the keys like that.
Sort of like when you have really, really long fingernails.
Yeah, I don't know what that's like. But there's
oh, come on, Michael, let's see those nails. Okay.
There's a few devices that we also are working on that, so sorry to go back, the Victoria Hand can do a lot of different tasks. Like people use it at school, work, at home, but there are some things that people have requested to be able to do that the Victoria Hand can do, but it might take a little bit of practice or learning. So we're trying to create these specific devices. So there's one where it'll just be a pen holder that slots into the prosthetic hand, so somebody could write again. There's a phone holder because if somebody tries to hold the phone in their able hand, they can't really use the prosthetic to navigate on a touchscreen. And then there's also a beverage holder. And you mentioned the computer, but we also are working on something to use for the computer mouse. And there's all these other ideas that we have that we really want to begin to implement, and it just makes the whole hand more useful for people all around the world.
Yeah, wonderful. And what about maintenance, Kelly, on the hands? Rough and tumble, little kids are using these hands, workers, the wear and tear on them. Do they break down very easily? And what are maintenance costs like?
Yeah, so as we mentioned, we are always kind of changing a little bit, trying to make the hand better and better. So a lot of the times when we do come out with a new hand design, we'll try to reach out to people that have the Victoria hand and provide them with an updated version. So we haven't had too many people outgrowing the hands. That said, we have fit some children with hands, and obviously kids grow really, really fast. The biggest thing is their limb socket. Of course, as somebody's growing, their residual limb is also getting bigger. But what's really convenient is, since everything is 3D printed, our partners can simply take a new impression of their limb. They can 3D print a new limb socket, and then they can just disassemble, put their hand on the new limb socket, put the harnessing back together, and then they have a new limb socket that fits, and they can still use their hand. And then when the hand does break, because it is just kind of like a little puzzle assembly, if say a finger breaks, just because it was used for a long time and that was its life, our partners are able to just print out that one finger part, and then they can fix it and give it back to the person. And it's really convenient because we have these partner sites locally, so it's hopefully not too far for anyone to travel. And the printers can print individual parts very, very quickly, so it's hopefully a really easy, quick fix, and then they can go back to using their hand again.
Fantastic. What a wonderful design. Has this won any international awards, Michael, this particular design out of you, Vic? It should be.
I can't think of any design awards, but we definitely, we have gotten support from various organizations that it's meant a lot to us through Google.org, TD Bank Group, various other ones, and to have their support behind us really just provides us and people with confidence that we can continue to grow this. As Kelly mentioned, we primarily are engineers, so we need to sometimes take our foot off the pedal, because all we want to do is engineering and everything, and sometimes we got to be like, okay, let's hold on, let's cut this design off now, and then we'll implement other stuff in the future.
And unfortunately, we have to cut this off fairly soon as well. We've got about a minute left. But yes, I want to just add so our viewers know you're both biomedical engineers there, both graduates of the University of Victoria, and really doing some incredible work out there in the world. So way to go, Victoria alum. Yeah. Any closing thoughts, Kelly, before we wrap this up today?
Yeah, I guess really quickly, thank you to the University of Victoria. We are a separate charity, but we work very closely with the university. We have lots of student volunteers who have done internships with us, who volunteer with us. It's always so wonderful to see what young minds come up with, especially in an innovative sense. And of course, we want to say thank you so much to all of our donors and supporters. We're a charity, and we wouldn't be here if people didn't believe in what we were doing. So it really is a huge joint effort of people that want to make a difference.
Thank you, Kelly. Michael, last word to you.
Well, Kelly said it all so well. It's hard to follow up. But yeah, we are so grateful for the community in Victoria and abroad who really make this all possible. It just wouldn't be possible without them. So we just appreciate it so much.
Well, thank you so much for the wonderful work that you're doing out there. There's so many good news stories in what you're doing. You're changing lives, you're changing families, you're changing communities. So you're to be congratulated heartily for the wonderful work that you're doing there at UVic. It was a pleasure to have you here and learn more about the Victoria Hand Project. And it was nice to talk to the hand. And about the hand. And to give you a hand. Thanks so much. And before it gets worse, they're cringing in the background here. I will say thank you so much for joining us, and we will look forward to supporting the good work that you're doing there at the Hand Project. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again next time on Coast Connections. Thank you.